Hello everyone and welcome back to Cute Crochet. My name is Sri and in today's video I am going to show you how to make this chevron round cushion cover. I've always really loved this pattern and it is such a beautiful throw pillow to put on your bed or your couch. This is very easy to make because it is entirely made out of single crochets. However, single crochets does take some time to make and it takes the most amount of yarn compared to other types of stitches. So it is not a very quick project per se, so keep that in mind. Mine took around 4 to 5 days to make. As you can see, the pattern goes around on both sides and you can make the two sides look different or same as you want to. So let's get started. Our cushion cover is going to be made of a large piece of chevron crochet just like this, and our first course of action is to determine how large this piece needs to be, and this will of course depend on the size of our cushion, so we are going to start by measuring it. First, we are going to go around the cushion and measure the circumference of it. As you can see, it's a little more than 100 centimeters, so the length of our piece needs to be a little bit less than that because crochet does tend to stretch out a little bit. Next, we are going to measure the diameter of our cushion. This way, the diameter is coming out to be 45 centimeters, but I am also going to rotate the pillow 90 degrees and measure it again because these cheap pillows are often not completely circular. As you can see, this way it is 40 centimeters, but it should be fine once you put on the cover. The width of the piece needs to be the same as the diameter. You need to measure from one point to another, and as you can see, I was aiming somewhere in between 40 to 45, so around 41. To figure out the number of V's we need to make for our specific length, we are going to start by making a gauge. You can make the gauge using any old scrap of yarn, just as long as it is the same kind of yarn that you are going to use for your cushion cover, and also use the same crochet hook that you are going to. Start by making a slip knot. Next, we are going to start chaining. To chain, yarn over and then pull that loop through your hook. It's very simple. We are going to make 26 plus 2, so 28 chains. You'll understand soon why I'm breaking it up like this. Here I have made 26 chains. I am going to make 2 more. This is the number of chains we need for 1 V, 28 chains. We are going to consider it as 26 multiplied by 1. This one is for 1 V plus 2, so 28. Now we are going to start working into this chain. We are going to skip that first chain and then stitch the second and third chains together. For that, skip that first one and insert your hook into the second chain and pull up a loop. You will have 2 loops on your hook, but do not complete this stitch. Instead, insert your hook into the next chain and again pull up a loop. Now, you will have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops at the same time, and that will finish 2 chains together. Now, into the next 11 chains, we are going to simply make 1 single crochet. To make 1 single crochet, first insert your hook into the next chain and pull up a loop. You will have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through 2. And that is 1 single crochet. Make 10 more single crochets into the next 10 stitches. Here I finished doing 2 chains together and then 11 single crochets. Now into the next chain we are going to make a peak. For a peak we are going to simply make 3 single crochets into 1 stitch. Then again into the next 11 chains we are going to make 1 single crochet. After doing that, you should have 2 chains remaining. We are going to stitch them together in the same way that we did the first 2. Here you can already see the shape of the V. We are going to make one more row to give this a little bit more structure before measuring it. Chain 1 and turn your work, and then we are going to do 2 single crochets together into the first 2 single crochets. Insert your hook into the first stitch and pull up a loop, then into the second stitch and again pull up a loop. When you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3, and that is 2 single crochets together. Then into the next 11 single crochets, make 1 single crochet each. Then into the next stitch, make 3 single crochets into the same stitch. Then into the next 11 single crochets, again make 1 single crochet. After making the 11 single crochets, you should have 2 single crochets remaining. We are going to stitch those 2 together in the same way that we did the first 2. Then lay down your shape flat and then measure the distance in between these 2 points. As you can see, it's almost 10 centimeters. So we can conclude that to have a length of 100 centimeters, we need to make 10 peaks. Now we can get started on the actual piece. First, we need to leave some yarn out, and this yarn will be used to sew up the cushion in the end. There is no fixed length, but I did wrap my yarn around 3 of my fingers about 20 times, and this was plenty. Then go ahead and make a slip knot, and then we can start chaining. To have 10 V's, the number of chains we need to make is 26 multiplied by 10 plus 2, so 262 chains. I'm going to finish making the 262 chains and then I'm going to meet back up with you. Here I finished making the 262 chains. As you can see, it is quite long and it can get a bit tricky keeping track of the number of chains you have made. So I placed a stitch marker after every 100 chains just to make my life easier. Now we are going to start working into this chain. For the final piece, what I like to do is flip the chain over and then work into the back loops of it, and this gives a nice finished edge, but this is completely optional to do, and if you find this too tricky, you can simply do it like I did the gauge and it will be fine. Now skip the first chain and insert your hook into the back loop of the second chain and pull up a loop, but do not complete that stitch. Again insert your hook into the third chain and pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops at the same time, and that finishes 2 chains together. Now we are going to make single crochets into the next 11 chains. This first part is pretty much the same as what we did for the gauge. Here I finished making the 11 single crochets. You can see the finished edge on both sides. Now into the next chain we are going to make 3 single crochets into the same chain. Then again make 1 single crochet into the next 11 chains. Here I finished making the 11 single crochets. Now the pattern is going to differ from the gauge. Instead of the next 2, we are going to stitch together the next 3 chains. To do that, insert your hook into the first chain there and pull up a loop. Again into the next chain and pull up a loop. Again go into the third chain and again pull up a loop. You will have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 4 at the same time. and that will do 3 chains together. Then we are again going to make 1 single crochet into the next 11 chains. Here I have finished making the 11 single crochets. Now into the next chain we are again going to make 3 single crochets. Then again make 1 single crochet into the next 11 chains. So basically what we are doing here is increasing and decreasing at a regular interval, which is 11 single crochets in this case. When we make 3 single crochets into one stitch, that is considered an increase and it creates a peak, and when we do 3 stitches together, it is considered a decrease and it creates a valley. This is the general idea of the chevron pattern. We are going to continue this all across the length of this chain, making 11 single crochets and then alternating between increases and decreases in between. I'm going to finish this and meet back up with you. In this first row, you should be especially careful about counting your stitches because you don't have any other row before it to use as a guideline. If you mess up the stitches somewhere in between, it won't match up in the end and you will have to undo the entire thing and do it again. Here I am almost at the end of my chain. If you have done everything correctly, you should have 2 chains remaining, and we are going to stitch those 2 together in the same way that we did the first 2. Here you should be able to see all your peaks and valleys at regular intervals. After this row, I am going to change colors. So chain 1 and fasten off, leaving a little bit of tail for sewing in the end. You don't have to change colors after every row. You can make a few rows of each color, but I would suggest changing colors after every few rows because that brings out the pattern of the chevron nicely. Then bring in your next color and wrap it on your crochet hook like this. Then insert your crochet hook into the first stitch of any one side and make a slip stitch to attach the yarn. Make a note of which side you are starting this row from, and from now on we are going to start every row from this side so that all our rows are facing the same direction. It doesn't matter on which side you end the color, just as long as you start from the same side. Chain 1 and bring that yarn tail to the back because we are going to work over it. Then we are going to do the first 2 single crochets together like so. Next we are going to do 1 single crochet into the next 11 stitches. And then into the next stitch we are going to do 1 increase, which is 3 single crochets into 1 stitch. And then again 11 single crochets and then 1 decrease, which is 3 single crochets together. This pattern is going to be the same for every row from now on. I am going to finish this row and then meet back up with you. So increase and decrease alternately with 11 single crochets in between. Continue doing this all the way across until you have 2 stitches remaining, and we are going to do those 2 together. Now I plan to continue with this color, so I am simply going to chain 1 and turn my work and continue. Continue making rows in the same way and make as many rows as you need to reach the same width as the diameter of your cushion. I'll meet back up with you once I'm at the last row. Here I'm going to change colors for the last time. The only difference is we are going to leave a longer tail and we are going to leave it out instead of working over it because we are going to need this tail for sewing. The rest of the process is pretty much the same. Now I'm going to meet back up with you in the end. Finally I'm at the end, so I'm going to chain 1 and fasten off, leaving quite a bit of tail just as we did in the beginning. This is going to be used to sew up the cushion in the end. Here's my finished piece. As you can see, I tried to do sort of a mirror image thing so that the two sides of my cushion were kind of the same. I did not succeed completely because I should have started mirroring exactly at the midway point, which I didn't. But oh well, it will look good either way. This is the front of my panel and this is the back. You can see by the way the valleys are, and also I've tried to keep all my knots at the back as well. Now we are going to fold the piece in half, keeping the bad side on the outside like this, and we are going to sew this piece along the edge. This is where all the yarn tails that we left will come in handy. Thread each yarn tail individually into a yarn needle and then stitch up the edge of the corresponding color like so. In the end, tie a knot to secure it in place. If you have left a longer tail, you can also use your crochet hook to make slip stitches to join the edges. First, bring the yarn tail to the other side. Then insert your crochet hook through both sides and then pull the yarn tail through both layers. And continue to make slip stitches all the way across that color. In the end, chain 1 and fasten off. Both the methods look exactly the same on the other side, so you can do either method. Here I finished sewing the edge with the corresponding colors and then I have tied knots with the tails so that it's not that messy, and now I'm going to flip this tube inside out. Then insert your pillow into this tube horizontally. Since we made this tube exactly to the measurements of the pillow, it should fit perfectly. Place the pillow about halfway in. In my case, I know that my green stripe is about halfway in between the two sides, so I'm going to place the seam of the cushion along it. Then what we have to do is bring all these points to the center and form nice even pleats all the way around by sewing them in place, and this is way easier to do than you might think. You don't even have to do anything special. Of course, we are going to do this on both sides of the cushion. This is where the yarn tails we left at the beginning and the end will come in handy. Unwrap it and put it on a yarn needle. We are going to match up the two sides of a V and sew along the edge. To make our stitches, we are only going under the outer loops of our stitches so that our stitches look more even and they lay flatter and look nicer. We are going to take 2 stitches, one from either side, and stitch through them. We should be able to do 12 stitches along each side. We are not going to stitch through the stitch on top that forms the peak and the stitch at the bottom which forms the valley. Pulling this long yarn tail through is going to be a pain, but it's definitely better than attaching a new strand of yarn for every side. Once you have finished sewing along one side, we are going to match up the next 2 sides. Make sure that your stitches are lining up nicely and then stitch to this side as well, going from top to bottom. Here I finished sewing the second edge, but now our yarn is at the bottom, so we have to travel it back up to the top so that we can sew up the next edge. I'm going under the single crochets of the last row. Now that our yarn is back up to the top, we can match up the next two sides and then sew along it, and we are going to do this all the way around until all the 10 edges have been joined. Here I have sewn all the way around and there should be a hole remaining in the middle. Now I am weaving my yarn in and out through the tops of each of the peaks. Once you have gone all the way around, you can pull on that yarn to cinch the hole closed. The hole might not close up all the way, and in that case we have to make a couple of extra stitches at the middle. Here I have finished sewing the center. I lost a little bit of footage there, but hopefully you get what to do. Now I am tying a knot to secure the stitching in place, and then I am going to bring that yarn tail in through the pillow and then back out through the same yellow area, and then I am going to cut the excess yarn. I have done the same thing on the other side as well, but I have kept that yarn tail still hanging there because I am going to use it to attach a button at the center. Attaching the buttons is completely optional, but I feel it looks much neater and more finished this way. I am going to sew through both sides of the cushion using the same piece of yarn, and on the other side I am going to attach another button. I had initially planned on using covered buttons for this, and I had ordered some velvet covered buttons, but they have not arrived yet, so I had to use these ordinary ones instead. I had totally planned on switching them out once they arrived, but I ended up liking these quite a lot, way more than I expected to, and now I don't know if I want to change them out anymore. Once you bring that yarn tail back out through the other side, when you pull on it, it will cinch the center of the cushion. I have not cinched it all the way, but just a little bit. The more you pull on that yarn tail, the more it will get cinched. Now I am bringing that yarn tail back in through that button one more time. Then I am going to make a knot to secure the buttons in place. And that's it. I love how this cushion came out, and I love the colors I used for it. I feel they bring out the chevron pattern beautifully. I hope you guys like this video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.